I'd sincerely like to thank the ANZ Bank for their support in bringing this video to you. Lynda McCallum's recent Facebook posts, where she detailed her experience and struggles living with multiple sclerosis, touched many people. Her honesty, courage, passion and insecurities were there for the world to see. I decided to reach out to Lynda and am humbled to have this opportunity to bring her story to you. Lynda has so much wisdom to share, and I, for one, am in awe of her strength and character. We chatted so long it was necessary to split our interview into two parts. This is part one, and I hope you enjoy hearing Lynda's story. Lynda, thank you so much. I have been so looking forward to chatting with you and to share your wisdom, which I know you have so much wisdom within you, just reading all your stories. So I'm so looking forward to this. I do want to start by saying, and while I was looking through your Facebook page, I noticed some dash hounds on the page. And we have two schnauzers at home, but recently my son bought a dash hound. And oh my gosh, she's very beautiful, but they are different dogs, aren't they?
Yeah, for sure.
They're just naughty. I just want to show you. This is the book that I've been reading. And Coco started reading it this morning for me. So, which I thought, like, it's an appropriate book for our conversation. It's all about mind control, which is wonderful, and I've so enjoyed it. I think Hutton needs to buy me a new one now.
I think so too, yeah. We've been lucky. Olivia, my daughter, she bought a dash hound probably about 3 years ago. And she is probably not your average dash hound. She's so quiet and so placid, and she's just like another little part of our family. She's human, and Olivia has bred a couple of litters of puppies from her, and it's our first dash hound as well. And she's a little gift in our family.
Yeah, well, Coco is too, I must admit. And when I showed Barry when he came in at smoko time, he said, "What did you do to her to make her cranky?" Because she does. She seeks revenge.
Yeah, they're human. I think they are human. I do believe that.
Oh, yeah. But anyway. But Lynda, I want to start off with your horse career, because you've led a very distinguished career within the horse industry, and particularly in the cutting industry, which you are really only a newcomer in terms of longevity. But so you rode in the opening ceremony of the Sydney Olympics, which must have been such an honour.
Yeah, definitely, Kelly. So I sort of started when I was young. My parents took me to Pony Club, and then I sort of branched out into the stock horse classes. So I guess it's a natural transition, and we used to camp draft and do all that type of thing. And as a part of the Stock Horse Society was actually garnered to provide and get people to do the opening ceremony. So to provide the people and horses, and to even get accepted to be able to ride in that, they had tryouts throughout the Eastern Seaboard. So you had to go, and you had to go through a process to even get accepted for you and your horse to ride in it. And it was, walk over a tarp, walk over a bridge, open, shut a gate, crack a whip, just all that type of thing to show the versatility of your horse and temperament, I guess, and your riding ability. And I made that team, and we had several practices, I remember, but we had to sign a confidentiality agreement, and we weren't to tell anybody about what we were doing or the routine. And there would sometimes be times where we were training. There were a few trainings in Scone, and then we trained at Castle Hill in Sydney before the ceremony. And I remember, you'd see the media choppers come over and things like that. And we would have to, try and stop what we were doing because I didn't want to let it get out. And it was such a process to be involved. And then even just getting into the stadium, the massive trucks, the logistics of getting us in, the security, we'd have security go all through the truck, all under the truck every time we went into the stadium to either practice or the actual night of the opening ceremony. And this was before, we had the Twin Towers incident. So this was 2020. And I often think about that. I thought, was the heightened risk, were, I guess, our security of Australia aware of a heightened risk at that time? Because it was well before, the Twin Tower incident, and and then we ended up, going over us with the security. I guess it happens all the time, but I just found that it opened my eyes up to a lot of that, and it was an incredible honour to be a part of the opening ceremony. And I felt very, I guess, proud to be an Australian.
Oh, it just would have been a tremendous experience.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about the cutting because so you started cutting through your friendship with Jane and Tom Williamson, and I love your description of how he put you on One More Playboy, and it reminded me a little bit of a drug dealer, just giving you that one little taste and then you're hooked and then you keep coming back for more. And no doubt you bought horses from Jane and Tom, but would you just share that story? Because I really do love it, and it just it made me laugh a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So I was not aware of what cutting was, really. So Jane and I met on the first day of at university. We were both studying commerce law, and we were at uni in Armidale. I can remember the very first lecture, sitting on these steps and just talking to this other girl who seemed like a country girl. Jane was a Queensland girl, and we struck up a friendship, and we had a very strong friendship throughout our time in college. And Jane loved cutting. And so she would, when the cutting was on in Tamworth, the Futurity, and it was in the old shed, and I think anybody who remembers the old shed at Tamworth can say that was probably some of the best years of cutting that we've ever seen in Australia. And it was the thing to go to, and I think times have changed so much from then, but it was the premier sale. It was the premier, I guess, time when Australian rural people got together and socialised, which I believe is now, your Nutrien sale. But now, at those times, it was then. And I remember when it was on, Jane would say, "Come with me to this cutting." I'm like, "Oh, what's cutting?" And we would go down for night time. We'd take a carload, and one of us would be the driver, and the rest of us would have a hell of a time. And then we would go back to university and do our lectures, and then go the next night. And so, I was introduced to, I guess, I thought cutting was just the party and the big shed and the bar and the band every night, and I loved it. But I didn't really understand the beauty and what the horses did. It was, So then when Jane and Tom sort of got together towards the end of our university life, I used to go and visit, and Tom gave me a few times. When Tom was competing in Tamworth on One More Playboy, he got me to help him and Luke. And then one time when I went up to see them at their place, Tom gave me a ride on him on the mechanical cow. And just that feeling. And everyone who I speak to since says it's just that one feeling, and it is like a drug. And, so my addiction, I can blame Tom and Jane for that, I think.
Oh, gosh. And Lynda, it hasn't been, a picnic for you. Like, you haven't had it easy. And I loved listening to your story about when Jim used to, when you'd get up really early, Jim would stay with the kids and you'd go out just so you could ride. And that just shows so much dedication and tenacity and I guess a belief in yourself, do you think?
Yeah, So in those early times, I've always been guided by, I think Tom has a lot of wisdom in how he breeds his horses, and Tom can really see a great athlete when he knows one, and a great horse when he sees one. I've always been guided by Tom in how I bred my horses and what we went to and that type of thing. So I started off very early on, and I had two young horses, a One More Playboy filly and an Acres Destiny gelding. And I had little kids, babies, and Jane did too. And we used to talk on the phone a lot. And Tom said, "Why don't you train them for the snaffle bit Futurity?" And I went, "Oh, do you think I could?" He said, "Yeah, just start, and he helped me. I went to clinics, and I've had a lot of people help me throughout my time. Link Bowman's been brilliant. But anyway, so I started, would get up early in the morning. And for any, I guess, rural woman, when you have those little children, and whether you've got, I didn't have a husband who worked on the property. We did all our work on the property on the weekends, but he was an agent. So he was gone from daylight till dark, and I was very isolated. And I guess for any rural woman raising a family in a remote location, it can be really isolating. And I think it's difficult because you have this new person you have to look after, but you still have your dreams and goals and ambitions as a woman that you kind of, I guess, throughout, I guess it's our culture that you put those aside for a time and then you'll come back to them later once the kids are raised, but it's difficult because no one prepares you for that mentally, that's what, new babies are bringing. You love your new babies, but you still have your own life. So I was great. Jim was supportive, and I would get up early in the morning before he went to work, and the kids were still asleep, and I'd ride the horses, usually on a mechanical cow or something like that. And then as time evolved, I would go up to Chris and Link Bowman's on a Wednesday night. Every Wednesday night, Jim would be home by 5, and I would go up to their place and get a lesson, and went to clinics and did things like that. So for me, it was a time in my life where we weren't going to drafts all the time, which was easier when we had little tiny kids. My kids are very close together, so going to a draft was difficult, and you'd take, a lot of horses, whereas I just had a couple of horses. I could have a goal and I could work towards achieving that goal. And I've always been very goal-orientated, so that's how it started, I guess. And that's how I started in the sport of cutting. And I took those horses to the Futurity and went in the Snafflebit Futurity, and my one more Playboy mare was second, and it was fifth. She was fifth. I was thinking about, and then that gelding went on, and Jim rode him at a Snafflebit Futurity, and he ended up second at Toowoomba. And we still have him, but we sold the mare. But he's become a big part of our life. But that's where it started.
And Tom was pretty smart, I suppose, in dealing to you, because he knew that he'd get Jim hooked as well.
Yes, yeah. And like I said, we both really admire the way he thinks about horses and is able to see a good horse. He knows a good horse when he sees one. And he's been very helpful all throughout what we've done, even with what we breed to now, and what we have bred to all our time. And, of course, it progressed to I bought Metallic Storm from Jane and Tom through Nutrien, quite some years later. So, it progressed through to then.
And he was almost a game changer for you, wasn't he, that horse?
Without a doubt. So I had several other good horses in the years leading up to that, but I was still very much learning. But I trained Snafflebit Futurity horses for some years, and then I realised I needed to buy myself a really good, solid, one-handed cutting horse, so I got the feel for what I was trying to achieve. So we bought a really lovely gelding that we did quite well on, both Jim and I. And then we started to train our own with the help of other people from time to time, and compete. And I had some great horses leading into that time with Metallic Storm. So I probably had a little more knowledge of what I was doing. But so Tom and Jane had that horse. He was very green through the ring, and I had left the sale because I thought he'd make too much money, and it goes to show you need to sit there the whole time. But I had a friend of ours who's an agent with Nutrien on the phone, and we were able to purchase him. We purchased him for $22,000, and we brought him home, and I had the help of several other people early on. He was a little bit tough, but then I trained him out after that, and he was a game changer. He was a special horse, that horse, and I feel like he really, it might sound cliche, but he tried for me, and the same way that I see him try for Wyatt now. He knows you. He knows who you are. He knows you. And, it was a very, very special journey, that journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Horses are far more superior, I think, in how they feel more than think, then we see. I really believe that. I think they have a knowing, don't they?
Yeah, they definitely do.
A connection.
Kelly. It was so. I was diagnosed with MS. Well, I had my first neurological episode about 3 weeks before the futurity for Metallic Storm. And I had him entered in the non-pro futurity, but I felt like he was pretty special, and I'd really stayed consistent with him, and I felt like he was a good horse. And the first time we really knew that, I think, was we were at Link Bowman's one day having on training day, and it was before the futurity, before I was unwell, and it was leading, like in the same year, but before I had that episode. And the horse kind of lost his back end. I was working cow, lost his back end, and he slipped down, and I sort of come off the side, and he got up and he kept working the cow, and without me on him. And no one else saw it, just Jim and I saw it. And Jim's like, "Did you see that?" I was like, "Yeah, I did see that." You know, you see that and you think, "Oh my goodness." And he was young. It's not like he's an old horse and it's ingrained in him. And so we felt it was pretty special. And I got out of hospital. I'd been down in the John Hunter because I'd had treatment to try and reduce the inflammation on my brain that was causing the symptoms I was having, which I couldn't walk. And I'd had a lumbar puncture because they check your spine for sign of lesions with MS. So you can have lesions in your spine and in your brain. And as a part of my diagnosis, they had to check my spine. So I'd had a lumbar puncture, and they let me out about 4 days after I was initially admitted, and to go home to rest because I had actually looked after this lumbar puncture site, but also I'd had 3 days of IV steroid to try and take the inflammation out of my brain. So, yeah, I've been through a bit of an experience. But so we went home, and of course, in hindsight and looking back now, you think, what was I thinking? But the futurity is 2 weeks away. And sometimes us horse people can be a little crazy. And so I said to Jim, "What are we going to do? The futurity is 3 weeks away. I had a really nice derby horse, a really nice classic horse." And he said, "I'll ride them. You rest." So we had some friends there, and they come and they worked horses. And I was laying on the lounge, and I was in my pajamas, and I couldn't stand it. So I walked over to the stables, and Jim was working him, and I just couldn't. It sounds terrible, but I just couldn't stand sitting there. So I put on my boots and I went and rode him in my pajamas, and worked him that day. Well, I then went back to the house, and from then on, for the next 2 or 3 days, I could not get up. I had a massive headache. Every time I got up, I threw up. I was really unwell. I ended up ringing the hospital, and because of what I'd done, my lumbar puncture site had leaked. So I had actually lost all the spinal fluid from my spine and around my brain. And so I ended up back in hospital to have a blood patch, and they take blood from your arm and they put it in your spine to get the pressure back up around your brain. But during this procedure, you have to be awake because you have to tell them when the pressure is too much in your brain. So over time, your body then converts that blood back to spinal fluid. But in that time, they just have to get the pressure back in so that your brain is not sitting on your skull, basically, because it's suspended in spinal fluid. And so I had that procedure, and I was awake, and I had that procedure. And I remember that it was very, very painful. And I remember you become a little bit irrational, but I can remember saying there was 2 surgeons, because one has to take the blood from your arm, one puts it straight in your spine. And I remember sitting there going, "But I've got this big event. I have a futurity." And, "What's a futurity?" I said, "It's a horse event." And they went, "Darling, you're never going to ride horses again." And I just remember sitting there. I didn't say anything. I was laying there, and I just had tears coming out of my eyes. I was so sad, and I had no one in the hospital, and I wheeled me back to my room, and there was no one there, and I was probably rock bottom right then. I was in a lot of pain, and then the medical professionals had just told me this, and I just thought my world's about to end. But Jim came and picked me up. we came home. I started to feel like I could function. I wasn't well, but I could function. And 10 days out from the futurity, I rode him again. And you can actually enter in the open futurity up until the draws are done. So Jim said, let's go in everything we can go in. You can still function right now. I'd had this diagnosis of MS. We didn't know what the future would hold. You know, you think the worst. Will I not be able to walk? Will I not be able to do this? Will I not be able to do that? So he's like, let's go in everything. You just go in everything. I said, I don't think I'm well enough because it's such a big event and it's hard on you physically and mentally. You know, it's day after day and early starts and late nights and lots of riding. And we had a great girl that was helping us at the time. She was just brilliant. And he said, well, Sarah and I will look after the horses. You just hop on and show. And that's the way that futurity unfolded. And I concentrated all my energy on just looking after myself. So I was juicing, and I've been a big believer in juicing. I was juicing in the caravan. I'd go to bed at 6 o'clock at night because I was too unwell to do anything else. But I'd get up every morning. I'd go for a walk while they looked after the horses. I would meditate because I was into trying to get my head in a good space at that time. And Sarah and Jim looked after the horses. They doctored the horses. They loped the horses, prepared the horses. I'd work them in a practice pen, of course, and then I'd show them. And I don't know, it was incredible how I was just in that state of execution. I was in that ideal performance state. You know, I was just happy to be there because I didn't know how much longer I would be able to do it for. So I wasn't too worried about all the peripheral things that often get in your way of, you know, executing your best under those circumstances in a performance arena. And I did just execute, and I was in the moment, and I think that's what happened. And I won. I come home with $130,000 in prize money from that one event, which was just phenomenal.
Oh gosh. And to think of all that support that you had from those, you know, from Jim and that beautiful girl that was helping you, because and that they could see and understand what your needs were, and help you in so much during that time. Just oh gosh. And you know, you should never listen. I mean, I know you have to listen to your doctors, but you know, when they tell you you can't do something, gosh, you know, how many times do you hear stories like yours where people either believe them or they don't, and it's probably a good thing not to believe them in many cases, because it gives you I often think if someone tells you you're sick, you start feeling sick, don't you? Mm-hmm. Or you feel, I better not do that because I'm sick. Mm-hmm. So you somehow have to get out of that mind, or, you know, from what you've been told. Well, I might be sick, but I'm feeling okay. So, which is exactly what you did, and what you continue to do.
Definitely. And it was even to now, you know, and I guess in the writing that I've done recently and I've shared, you know, I struggle when somebody tries to tell me how I should be feeling, or that, you know, there's something wrong with me when I don't feel like that. You know, I've even toyed with the idea of not going back to my neurologist. I know I have to, but I don't even think about it. And even, you know, when you hear someone else make a judgment on your condition or what it's like, you know, that's what I find difficult, is I feel like no one can understand how I feel, what I'm going through, how my body is. And I guess it's in those moments you've just got to keep fronting up and pushing forward and putting one foot in front of the other. You know, I often think back on I was still an amateur competitor at that stage in my career. So that was 2018. And to be an amateur rider, you have to not have worked for a cutting trainer, basically, or have been married to a cutting trainer or be partner of a cutting trainer. So you're riding horses purely as a hobby. And or the other thing is you can't be in the non-pro Hall of Fame, which is $75,000. I think they've put it up to. You can't have won $75,000. So I was still an amateur, so I was in the amateur divisions as well. And then to make the Open Futurity final was, and I'd only entered the day the draws were done. It was pretty unheard of. And, it was pretty amazing. But I can remember the day of that final, the morning of that final. I remember thinking, I just want to remember this whole day. This whole day is so special to me, and I want to remember the whole day. I got up very early and I went, and anyone who's been to ALEC, to see how they set it up for the cutting, and where they have the judges' stands and the back fence where people work their horses before they go across the timeline. And there was no one in the ALEC arena. It was about 4:30 in the morning. And I went up into the judges' stands, which I'd never done, and I sat there and I did a meditation, and I did like a visualization, basically a pre-game visualization that I had found from a fellow that I followed, which is great with technology, and it was amazing. I can still remember sitting there, and the sounds you can hear, and the smell of the arena, and it was fully being present in that moment. And I tried to take that with me throughout the whole day. So even, as I'm going to go across the timeline, I just tried to smell and listen and hear, or even as they do, I don't know if you've seen, but before the Open Futurity, they have a race as they have the national anthem at the start of the Open Futurity. All the Open Futurity competitors stand along the back. They introduce you one by one on your horse, and you always ride a different horse because your horse is trying to stay nice and calm out the back with your floper on it. Ride a different horse and stand along the back fence, and they introduce you and your horse, stand out their national anthem, which was just, it was beautiful in itself. And then they race, all the trainers race out. And I'd never been involved in that race ever before. And I remember looking across, a couple of the guys that I'm pretty good friends with, and they're like, yeah, we're going to, bring it on kind of thing for this race. And as soon as the last word of the national anthem goes, everyone takes off flat out. It's my favourite part of the Futurity and the Futurity final. And even standing there and racing out, the exhilaration of that, being a part of that, being on the back fence among that open trainer company, and then, riding across the timeline, competing, having everybody in your corner that helps you in your help team. I had, just before I rode across the timeline, Phil Dawson come up to me. He was the next rider after me on Shines Like Metallic. And he came up to me and he went, "Oi." I said, "Yes." He said, "Least mistakes wins the Futurity. Go get them." I was like, okay. So you've got that type of support. You can, the support in the crowd. And it was such a special time. And then to end up on that back fence, and, Todd was the last rider and he beat me. But even to be lined up down there with Todd Graham, it was it was a very special moment, a very pivotal moment in my career. And I do believe, like you said, horses are special. They understand. And I really believe my horses that I had in that time, they felt that they knew. Well, I believe Metallic Storm, at least, he tried for me. He tried for me. I wasn't riding my best, and he gave it his all. And I don't know. He's a special horse. I was at a camp draft the other day, and I was walking past. I didn't even realise that it was Wyatt's truck, and I was walking past it in the night by myself. And I walked past, and I hear this whinny, like this nicker. I was like, "Oh!" I turned around, and it was him. And I walked over, and I was like, and it sounds crazy, but I just patted him, and I was in tears, and he just kind of nuzzled me like we used to. And yeah, he's a special horse. He's very.
Yeah, that's an incredible story. Lynda, where did your approach to life begin, like your holistic approach and mindfulness, did that start kind of with your diagnosis, or were you into that kind of stuff before? Or?
I would say it was with my diagnosis. it was searching for answers. I've always been a type for personal development. I always love listening to podcasts. I have always loved, I would say, the exercise and diet and meditation, journaling probably started before. The idea was sown probably a few years before, but it actually became a part of my daily routine, I guess, and what I do during that time frame. And even though I was brought up in the Christian faith, I think you still take forever in your lifetime, still searching, still trying to get an understanding. It's a hard concept to put a finger on. But now I feel like it's gone more into just a spirituality rather than, the Christian faith. I've taught in Catholic schools, and my mum, I was raised as a strict Catholic, but now I would say it's developed more into a spirituality and more with on a holistic level, as far as nature and just being present in the present moment. But I would say I'm still on that journey and figuring that out.
I think, I certainly am too. And as a woman, I guess we all have so many hats to wear, and I find it very difficult to slow my mind down. So now with the technology of, Googling something on YouTube, like as you said before, and listening to someone guide you through a meditation, it's a wonderful experience, isn't it? Because you're not doing it on your own. And living remotely, we don't have access to going to a meditation class or whatever. So, that book that the dog ate, it's been really pivotal for me, I think, in being able to really stop my mind.
I definitely think it's even advanced, in the last few years as far as that's concerned, with the amount of spiritual teachers, and you can go from a guided meditation to, there's all different forms of meditation. And I think there is something that if you keep searching, may bring something to your life that wasn't there before. And for me, it's finding. I even had, when on one of my trips to the USA, I was in a day spa once, and a lady put me on to a lady that I follow at the moment online, Sarah Blondin, and I will never forget that. That was 2016, and I now subscribe to her channel, and you actually can subscribe to her personally, and she does a weekly update and weekly meditation, but they're very moving what she does. And and that was through meeting this lady in a day spa in California. And so I think things happen for a reason. People come into life for a reason.
Yeah. And also, I interviewed this wonderful lady last year whose book remains to this day my favourite book ever. It's called Embraced by the Light. And I couldn't believe that Betty agreed to an interview. She's in her 80s now, but she says everything happens for a reason, and we're led in ways, and what you're going through teaches so many other people how to do things better and be better. And so sometimes someone who is having a tough time, that is for a reason. It's to teach other people, to show other people, and it's just incredible. And I want to dissect those two Facebook posts a bit, Lynda, because I didn't know you, and I read them, and oh gosh, they just full of so much. And I told you the story about my sister, how I had messaged you, and then next thing, as I sent the message to you, she's messaged me saying, oh, you should get in touch with Lynda for a possible interview. She is an impressive human being. And then other people I've spoken to since, just to find out a little bit more about you, they all say she's positive and she just has such a loving, generous vibe about her. And that's, you probably don't even know, and you probably don't even, you don't think about that, I guess. But I will refer to these notes because I've printed these the two posts off. And one thing I want to talk to you about is the judgment that you received when, you talk about it a lot and then you stop talking about it because you're being judged either. So I'll let you tell the story, but so you can explain that a little bit more fully. And I think that will teach us to not be so judgmental in our life and not to take, things at face value. So if you could just share that little bit about judgment.
Yeah, of course. It's still probably, it hurts me a lot. And those two posts, they come about, I have this fantastic, beautiful soul that's come into my life in the last, I'd say, I've known her for a while, but the last 4 or 5 months. And she contacted me a couple of months ago and asked me, and she's done work with different people in the equine industry as far as, and encouraged them to move forward as far as creating a business, creating a podcast, moving forward. She's mostly in the reining industry. And she contacted me because I had met her and we have mutual friends. And she said, have you ever thought of writing a book about your journey, about the Metallic Storm story and how you got into that mindset when you were competing? Because so many people struggle to cross the timeline or go into the camp. She said, let alone perform on a big stage after having what you'd been through just a few weeks before and being so unwell. And I started to toy with that idea, and she suggested, and I do journal, and she suggested, why don't you just journal and see where it goes? So I have been journaling and I haven't shared. And on the day that I wrote the first post was actually at my neurologist appointment. And I hadn't been for 18 months, and I was very anxious about it for some reason. And because I was on my own, and I don't go on my own for people to feel sorry for me, I go on my own because I like it for some reason now. My husband's beautiful, but sometimes in those environments, he gets really quite upset. And God love him. That's, he's allowed to do that. But sometimes I just need it to be my journey. And that's what I've come to throughout the time that I've had this, is that I just need for that moment it to be my journey. I just want it to be about me. I never make things about me. But in that moment, I just want to listen and for it to be about me and to feel what I want to feel. So I sat and I had my computer with me, and for some reason I decided to write, and I wrote every element as in that first post every step of the way. So before the appointment I had my computer and I wrote. After I'd had my MRI waiting for the neurologist, I wrote. And then after I'd received the bad news, I literally walked out and I wrote. And it was very therapeutic for me. I'm not sure how I would have coped with it otherwise. I was a bit of a mess, but I think that's why there was so much real and raw emotion in those pieces of writing. And the second piece, I actually did write at the end of my little stay when I didn't come home, and I just took some time for myself. And as far as the judgment is concerned, initially when I was diagnosed, I told people I'm a very open person, and I told people, and people were very supportive, and that all happened. It took me on the journey, and that happened with Metallic Storm, and it was we were on this, I guess, merry-go-round, and we just kept going, and I just thought I'd keep going, and keep going through it. As time went on, and things got back to me about what had been said and what people were saying or had said, and they were people who were probably close to me or conversations I overheard, it really literally shocked me, because I never thought that I would be discriminated against because of that illness. I never thought in my whole life I would be, because it's never crossed my mind to ever be like that with anyone else. I have nothing but empathy when people are in situations, but I have this theory since this has all happened that some people struggle with empathy. They really struggle to be able to understand and put themselves in someone else's shoes. And if they do, they tend to make it more about them or how they're seeing it or the impact it's having on them. But to truly be able to put yourself in someone else's position and then, go over that. But then I don't believe you can show compassion until you have empathy. I just think the two go together. That's my theory, and I've come to that over time, over the last few years. So when that all happened and things filtered back over a period of time, and I heard about a conversation that had gone on about 12 months ago where things had been said that were very, very unfair and unjust. I had heard about this conversation. I was by myself at home. I'll never forget it. And the kids were at boarding school. Jim was away at our other property. And I was rocked. Like, I was shocked. And I can remember being at home. I cried all night. And I was just so upset because I couldn't believe someone could say that. And I've harbored it. I haven't told anyone because then I was embarrassed about the fact that someone would even say it. But I remember that next day, I went on all my socials. I was doing the 50K in May, which raises money for the MS Society, and I'd have friends come on and help me do that each year, and we'd raise up to $10,000, $12,000. I didn't do that last year because I was so embarrassed about this fact that people saw me in that way. I deleted all signs, anything to do with MS off all my social media. And I guess this is, what our teenagers deal with every day. Like, I felt, I'd put myself in that position, and now I was, I'd copped the judgment at the age of 40, and I'm going back and deleting off social media. It really wasn't very effective or efficient, but that's what I didn't want the world to judge me in that way. I didn't want people, after going from talking about it so openly, all of a sudden I didn't want people to look at me as the woman who has been diagnosed with MS. And unfortunately, I think, MS, we probably think of aunts or, people we've known. My mother, I know, or our mother's era, you think about people they've known with MS and they think the worst because the treatments weren't there, even though it's not curable in this day and age. The treatments were not there at that stage. So people did regress quite quickly and would end up quite unwell. But these days, the treatment is pretty good, even though it can't cure it. It just, it prolongs your years of living a full life. And you get more life, usually, depending on what type of MS, but you get more living full life than what you used to throughout history. So, I just think that a lot of the comments come from being uneducated, not knowing, being scared. And, I harbored it for the last 12 months, and it's eaten me up to the point I didn't even want to go to events. I didn't want to go places. When COVID hit, I was happy to stay at home. I was very happy because I didn't want people to look at me as the person, with MS, or, should she be riding, or, is she a risk, or is she making it up because today I can ride and tomorrow I'm not well, because that's what happens with MS. But I haven't had any symptoms for such a long time either. I just couldn't stand the judgment. So, I deleted. I was happy not to go anywhere. And writing about that has given me a lot of healing, and it's given me a lot of freedom, because now I just think I'm just going to talk about it. And if anyone wants to judge, they can go ahead and judge, because they're not walking in my shoes, and I just have to do the best I can with where I'm at.
Lynda, I've come to the conclusion that because it's hurtful, you hear things that people say about you or someone that you love, and you get angry and you just want to go at them, or like you did, go back into your shell and not say anything and not put yourself out there. But really, people can say whatever they want about you. There's no, and it's cruel. It's very cruel. And people can, on the same side of the coin, other people can believe what that person's saying, but you don't have any control over that, do you? So you just have to do the best that you can. And it's taken you 12 months to come to the other end of that, I suppose, from those hurtful people. It's just
definitely. And I don't think it matters whether it's, something like this, whether it's an illness or whether it's a nasty rumor, or it's it's somebody, whether it's something that somebody believes has done wrong, not even in the eyes of the law, that somebody wants to judge another for, that's got no credentials behind it. It's just somebody who wants to, and there's nasty gossip and nasty rumors, and we're all just doing the best we can. That's where I come from. I'm like, everyone's just doing the best they can, and I do believe that there are so many more beautiful souls in this world than people who want to say nasty, judgmental things about you. I could count on one hand, that, but then I can't count the amount of support that I've had. So, everyone says, concentrate on that side where people are supportive of you rather than people who want to cut you down. And it's easier said than done, but I think it takes some work and constant work to get to that place where you just believe and you have all those beautiful people that you can wrap yourself up in, and they become your circle, and you keep them close, and you become your little tribe, I guess, so to speak, and keep moving forward.